Yeah. I suppose I should do the official this is a Hyperledger call, and this is the 25th of June um, call. Uh, although I suppose, is it the 26th there for you now?
Yes, that's right.
Nice. That's I love that overlap. I hate dealing with time zones, not gonna lie.
Right, it's the 25th in UTC, so that's all that matters.
Yes, yes. Uh terms of announcements, nothing new here. Recent work done. We got the 1221 PR merged, so actually updating the back channel. Um, what's left there is the updating in the actual AATH repo. Um,
Yes.
what
Yeah,
what's left
I'm
here, do you
gonna
think?
I'm gonna pause on this until the next two PRs are through, I think. Because that way we'll sort of hit the ground running with some better results, I think.
Uh,
Which would be nice to see.
Rather than incremental, do one PR and then do another PR. It'll be a little smoother just to bundle it all up into one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the next two PRs will be through, and then that should push a new image uh, when something gets merged into main. And then I can change this to use the main image. Also on this note, we've talked as well about the idea of having two images, one that's pointed to the main branch of Aries-vcx, and then one that is pointed to the latest tagged release.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So the Aries-vcx CI CD is programmed to do that. It'll create main tags. It should create main tags whenever there's something new pushed to main. Um,
That looks to be working correctly based off of the um,
oh, geez, what's all that?
uh, I merged in a bunch of Dependabot PRs, and
Okay.
so that updated main uh, this many times. So
Hmm.
these are the old main tags essentially.
Okay. Okay. I was sort of hoping it would just replace the one main tag so we don't end up with a million images, but maybe I need to look into that.
Yeah, it's more complicated, but one of the things we did with the AFJ is we actually every update to main we published a new um, for instance, we if we're on since we're on 0.64 now, these would be like 0.65.0 dash alpha dot zero. And then the next one that gets pushed is dot one, and then dot two and dot three. Um, allows you to reference better previous versions, but it's more complicated, and especially with what we're trying to do with the back channel. I don't
Hmm.
with the test harness being able to point to what's ever on main. I don't think it's appropriate for what we want here.
Yeah. So was that on each commit to main of AFJ that the new tag would automatically be generated for the new
Yes.
image tag? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, I suppose I'm worrying if every single commit having a new image is too much. Um, like a completely new image rather than replacing the one. Hmm.
I could definitely see that, and that like none of these are actually useful anymore. Mostly, uh, other
Hmm.
than if someone is testing. Let's say someone is testing and they're using an image and they build it off of uh, well, you're not going to be building it against the back channel, but just from a general image standpoint, if we
Yeah.
generate an image against main and someone wants to develop against that image and they are using this one, we've made a couple more commits. I guess there's an expectation that I would main is not a stable release. shouldn't be a stable release branch or
Yeah.
stable release build, I should say.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a way we can adjust it to actually override or do like a replace versus
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Because who? I guess who pays for this storage of images?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's a Hyperledger thing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. Okay. I'll need to make a note to look into this. Um, yeah, because otherwise Hyperledger might come knocking, saying where these 10,000 images.
And also related to this note, I've been meaning to, like, if we look at pull requests, Dependabot has opened up a whole bunch of PRs
Yeah.
again, and I would like to reduce. I'm going to remove the mobile ones and I think anything that's touching the legacy, because
Yes.
if it's anything in Indie SDK, I don't want to try and touch any of the dependencies there.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Very much agreed.
Cool.
Hmm. Okay, sorry. Yeah, what I was going to say, I got a bit
Ah,
sidetracked
sorry.
there. Is the the changes in the AATH repo that I was making, and we talked about having two images, one for main, one for tagged, the latest tagged release.
Yep.
Um, I think for this PR, this initial one, I might just have it so that it uses just the main
Yep.
tag. And yeah, I know you can see in the repo that, Akapai has like one for main and then one for, I think, for the tagged releases. Um, but from my understanding that they're not actually using anything other than the Akapai dash main one. I think the other ones might be old or are used for local testing. Because yeah, the Akapai main, I think, and you'll prove me wrong quickly. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, I think you may be correct. Well, at least in the outputs on the website here, they're only outputting Akamai main.
yeah,
I still think it might be a useful thing in terms of like I still like the concept, but I'm very much for the idea of let's get it PR'd against main, and then if we want to contribute or work with the AATH folks to have multiple images here, we can do that. Um,
yes. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And you called out how to do it, and it looks like Akapai maybe was doing it at a point in time. But now they're just running the one, and it's less maintenance effort because you have to define this whole run set thing for each variant.
right.
Um, so yeah, I'll just go ahead with just the main for now, and then we'll keep in mind doing the tag stuff. I think it'll probably come up again pretty quickly if we push something to main, which causes our AATH results to go bunk and we start getting 0%. Then we'll be like, oh, I wish we had an image that was on the stable releases as well to prove that we do have good results sometimes.
Yep, 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 yep. Also,
Yeah.
random tangent. Your changes fix this version here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's part of the back channel controller deciding what version to return there.
Got it. That was that string that you changed that needs to be manually updated whenever we do a release.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it's a little annoying that it's got to be manually updated.
Oh, that's
Um,
fine. The easiest way that I identified was I'm just doing a search and replace of the previous version, but since that
yeah,
one was just at 1.0, then there was no regular, there was no way I could find that. So
yep, yep, yeah, yeah, it's
cool.
cool. Oh yeah, I can see the AFJ. Is that the AFJ tagging style that you were talking about? The
Yes. Yep.
050 alpha? Yeah.
So 97 PRs have been merged, or I guess Yeah, 97 PRs have been merged since they released 0.5.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a cool way of tagging.
It was nice, especially when we were making significant updates to AFJ in between individual releases, so we could indicate that, oh, hey, something was working in this version, or we're testing things, but we don't want to test XYZ major change that was in a future version. So it made it a lot easier to talk about releases versus uh I probably closed it. Like the list of packages that are all based off of commits or hashes, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
it is pretty cool.
Awesome. The big stuff that I wanted to talk about today was related to the did exchange stuff. I think the first one I wanted to talk about actually was to see if you could help me figure out how I'm being dumb in that I don't understand um the security concern here of uh if we have a if we do a auth crypt, how uh, this question here of I'm not sure how just the thread ID and knowing the did of the requester is sufficient to actually make this attack if we're not doing signatures, obviously.
Yeah, no, definitely not being dumb. It is confusing, and I'm not totally sold yet. But I think the argument is so you receive an invitation. Wait, hang on, let me think about this before I speak.
Yep, yep,
Yeah, okay. So I give you an invitation and you reply with a request.
yep,
If, and this is a big if, so many things have to go wrong here. But
yep,
if someone else malicious knows that you sent a request, and they know that this person who's sending requests is pretty sloppy and they're reusing thread IDs or they have some deterministic thread IDs, like maybe they're just using some incrementing ID as
yep,
their thread IDs. And they're also a bad requester because they keep reusing the same peer did or something like that. Um, then yeah, if I know that you have sent some request to someone and it was using this thread ID and it was using this did, then me as the malicious person, I could effectively send you a response. Um, yeah, I could send you a response and I would send it to your did. So I would use the service endpoint and the public key that's in your did.
yep,
And I would tag the response message that I send with that thread ID. And if we're assuming that there's no need to sign the did rotate stuff, then you'll receive that response and go, oh, this is the response from the original inviter. I now have a connection with that inviter. Um, so yeah, I've essentially hijacked the connection from the inviter.
wouldn't that be um, completely mitigated by having the responder do auth crypt back because they have to use the keys in that process?
Yeah, so if they auth crypt the response and they the auth crypt is signed with the original inviter keys.
Uh-huh.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd work. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I
Because that's
suppose
the
they haven't proved that they own the new did that they're attaching to the response, if that matters. Um, but that'll quickly not matter because subsequent messages will be sent to that did within the response. So they'll either be able to decrypt it or not. So yeah, I think it
Uh,
would work, the auth crypt stuff.
that's really interesting because I think that okay, you have validated my understanding here in that the uh if we look at the RFC presently does state that it's supposed to use um
Yeah, use the new
the
keys.
new keys, not the invitation keys. Um,
Mm.
but I was like, why wouldn't we adjust this versus adding another signature to it? Um,
Yep. Yep. No,
okay,
I think that's true. Yeah, you could do it that way.
okay,
Um, yeah, it's weird because the RFC sort of uh, walks the edge on caring about the encryption envelope that happens and not caring about it. Like the signature stuff, the rotation stuff ensures that the encryption envelope, that part doesn't matter. You could send this over plain text and it should work, I think, as long as you have the did rotate stuff. Um,
yeah,
but then they're also like calling out encryption envelope in the response transmission section, as you just mentioned. So
yep.
are they leaning into the encryption envelope stuff or are they not? It's a bit odd. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that I'm not crazy with that. And I guess it's really honestly a sixes. Like if I was back there trying to make this decision with them 6 to 9 months ago,
Hmm.
we could have either approach would work of using
Yeah.
authcrypt from the old keys or signing the actual did rotate. Um, it's I guess sixes in that case. So
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Sure.
I just wanted to understand. Uh, I guess it is redundant though. This is redundant if you no, it's not because the keys aren't being auth crypt from the old keys, so it would have been a choice.
Yes. Yeah. I wonder if the decision between so going from 1.0 to 1.1, I wonder if the decision between adding this new attachment versus
Mm,
requiring the auth crypt stuff would be a breaking change.
I think it
Um,
would be because
yeah.
you would have to. It would be a breaking change. There would be no way to require because then the if you were expecting to validate the yeah no that wouldn't that wouldn't work now that you mention it.
Yeah. So maybe that was part of the reason to add the attachment rather than change the auth crypt requirement. Hmm.
Well, cool. Thank you for helping me not be feel crazy in that regard.
No, it was a good conversation we had to understand that because it is a bit odd.
So yeah, then the other part was uh I read through the Did Exchange 1.1 PR that you had put together. Um, lots of good stuff in here. I think my biggest concern that I wanted to talk through, and it's not even specific to your PR, it's just the current state of the repo, I'd say, to a certain degree,
Hmm.
of one of my concerns being that the Aries message, according to my understanding, I may be missing things obviously, but according to my understanding, is that the Aries messages don't actually end up including their type uh, and ID and, well, the protocol type, which includes the version and the ID in them. Which is a little odd from like a log perspective for one, but then also two, I think shows up in a like in this case where like it would be really nice for us to be able to um, have the message data that we're passing around include the version so we can do different things with it in different contexts. But
Hmm.
since it's not included on the message, we're trying to add back a like an invisible version marker to
Hmm.
highlight which version it is versus just including the version in the all the messages in the first place.
Yeah.
That's my initial thought. Is that where's the pitfalls in my thinking here?
Yeah, so I'll give you some context. So
Mhm,
the messages crate was made maybe 6 months to a year ago. Um, it was previously sort of scattered around these message definitions, but it was formalized into that messages crate maybe 6 to a year ago. And it was done by Bogdan, who was with Apps at the time. And he was quite a Rust whiz. He knew his Rust really well and
mhm,
leaned into all the fun Rust stuff and knew all of that really well. Um, yeah, he was very much a Rust scientist. I would label him as. Um, so his way, and he's sort of written up a manifest of how this messages crate works in the README. But the general idea is the Aries message is sort of this grand type which encapsulates all messages that might be. Um, and so Aries message, uh, well, I'll start at the bottom. So something like request v10, that message structure by itself doesn't have a type attached to it. It's just sort of this request message which has some content and some decorators and an ID. But once you encapsulate it into this Aries message structure, it'll give it the typing that it needs. So yeah, the Aries message is this like grand enum with all the variants of the different protocols, and then for each protocol, different variants for each version, and then for each version, different variants for each message type within that protocol.
mhm.
So yeah, when it's wrapped in this grand Aries message, then it has the context of what type it is. So then when you go and serialize the Aries message, it'll serialize it with that at type decorator and format it all correctly. And there's a lot of like SERDI serialization
Yep.
magic that goes on
Yes.
there. Um, yeah, so that setup sort of implies that these lower level structures, so like request v1 underscore 0, doesn't necessarily infer the type, the DIDCOM type of that message. That
Yep.
type is only inferred once you construct it into this Aries message. Um, yeah, does that all make sense?
Yeah. It it does. And so I guess one of the problems we're running into is that now we want to have a uh actually it wouldn't be there. In order to have a new minor version, we essentially need an entire another structure here, right?
Hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. 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 So that would be the most correct way, according to the current setup, to do it is to create a whole duplicate of that structure. Um, and that felt a little dirty to me, but maybe it's
Yep.
not if you lean into this philosophy of this crate. So since it felt a little dirty to me when I was implementing this, I went with the approach of adding that invisible marker, which yeah, distinguishes between V10 and V11.
Do you think it's a terrible idea? It probably is. I it I guess that there I guess I just already V11 here. I didn't have to add that. That's funny. Um it because on one hand, uh having it be completely separate means that it is very explicit and clear what forms up a given protocol's messages
Hmm.
for any given minor or major version. On the other hand, when it comes to minor version differences, that has a lot of, or can have a lot of duplicate code between the two protocols. Like there's only one field difference between these two.
Hmm.
Well, did exchange, but yeah.
Yep.
Um, so I agree with like the majority of that is shared. So I think it's wise to have, because the alternative would be to throw it all into one crate or into one folder definition here and have optionals, but it's hard to enforce whether or not you have all the optionals that are required for a V11. Um,
Hmm.
so that is some good background. So
Yeah, I think what I've done with the markers here, it sort of is yeah, the invisible markers. It's sort of uh in a way disrespecting the original philosophy of that messages crate, because it's adding in this extra version tag when that version is only meant to be contextualized once you embed it within this Aries message structure. Um, so I'm sort of cheating by having this tag in there. Uh,
yep.
yeah. And the main purpose of that tag is just to make it easy to convert back and forth between, um, yeah, that lower level message and the Aries message, the grand Aries message. Um, yeah, so maybe there's a better way to do it. Or maybe we want to change our approach with the messages crate.
I slightly lean towards the approach with the messages crate, but that is a bigger thing than um
Hmm.
this PR. Like that is a I don't want us to go about changing the entire messages crate in this PR, for instance, but from a larger term perspective, I'm wondering if it would be helpful um to be able to do so.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'll need to keep thinking about it. I think I could have. So if I didn't go with the approach of having this invisible version tag, and yeah, oh yeah, ignore that second approach there. But yeah, if I didn't go with the approach I've done with the invisible version tag, then I would essentially have to wrap. I would have to somehow give these messages context for what version they are. Because the problem came when integrating with that uh, did exchange handler code.
Hmm.
It'll take in some request, either a V1 or a V2
Yep.
or V11,
Yep.
and then it'll output some message based off what version the original one was. So the whole point of this invisible tag is that we embed that context within the message that we pass in. So nothing really has to change much. But to fully respect the messages crate, I think the more correct thing to do would be to pass in that context in some other way. And so that might be, and I know you don't like this, but that might be the like any request wrapper. And that has two variants, a V10 and a V11. Um, and the insides of those variants are the exact same request struct because there's no difference between V10 and V11 on that structure.
Hmm.
However, being wrapped in that any request enum gives it that context of which version we should treat it as.
Oh, so
Um,
we could have a wrapper, for instance, that is did exchange any requests and it's an enumerator, and if it's v10 or v11, they both just point to the same implementation. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, yeah. So the inner data exact same. However, since it's in that enum, we've given it the context of which version we should treat it as within our did exchange handler.
I think that to me seems appropriate, given that
Mm.
if we don't change the Aries messages crate to be able to have the messages, have the content and the structure, be aware of what type of version it is. Um,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
may
yeah.
want to
So
do that, but that's a different. I would say that doing a wrapper seems appropriate for this PR. Changing how the whole Aries messages crate is a different task if we want to do that.
yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. This is insightful. So I've sort of done a awkward in between here where
Yeah.
I've started adding some versioning to the lower level, which
Yes.
is potentially a new approach. Whereas I should be leaning into the existing approach, at least for this PR. And that would entail having that any request wrapper.
Yeah. I think that seems like the cleaner approach for this one.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, I'm down with that. Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
And then
Um
I suppose we'll continue the conversation about whether we want to keep following this messages crate philosophy. That'll be a very big discussion, perhaps.
I think so. What I think might be helpful there is I can imagine what it looks like, or I'm like, oh yeah, I think this would be really great and really useful in these ways. I think doing a well, you do have more Rust experience than me, but like whoever of us, like we take a sample triad of like, okay, just in the context of the Aries message crate, what does it look like to do this for one protocol? Is it a good idea to from there rather than taking it from conceptual to practical is probably a really good way to answer whether or not it's any better or if it's just different, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So yeah, the benefits of re-architecting it would really help with these cases of minor version bumps where much hasn't changed, which isn't really something we've encountered before in this messages crate because we only really have one version of each message.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think
yeah,
where it may come up more is I haven't implemented it yet, but I it's on my to-do list of of uh the pickup protocols, in that we have right now uh I believe this is V1. Actually, it's probably V2 that's implemented. But there's a V3 as well as I've proposed a V4. So,
Mm,
but the differences between V2, V3, and V4 are pretty minor. Um,
mm,
but we made major changes, or they're considered breaking changes, so that's why there aren't minor change versions.
yeah,
But it may be nice to be able to rely on some of the code between them. I'm not sure on that, but I agree in that your overall point, though, of like we haven't had to deal with too many minor version changes,
mm,
we haven't had a protocol, for instance, that has a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. We've had mostly major change versions.
yeah, yeah, and like major to the point where it's easier just to create new message structures.
Yep,
But as you're saying, there can be major bumps where it would be more convenient to reuse some common structure.
yep.
Um, yeah. Mm. Yeah, another consideration as well is what's going to happen to this crate when we go on to DIDCOM v2 message structures. Um,
Oh.
do we scrap it all or reuse it? What happens? It'll be tough.
Great. So DIGCOM v2. what happens to this crate. Okay, so one of the things from I haven't given a good read through the DICOM v2 spec, which I probably really should do, but from what I know, based off of seeing the protocols that have been defined using DICOM v2, is that the
Hmm.
message structure to me looks pretty similar. If I, for instance, dicom.org, if we take a look at, I didn't mean to go there. Let's take a look at media sharing. This is a protocol that Ariel has proposed,
Hmm.
I suppose demonstrated, that does have support for both DICOM v1 and v2. It has
Oh,
example
cool.
messages for both.
Yeah.
Um, and so this is nice for that comparison here of uh, you have your attachments, there's some items, a description, sent time, ID, and type, the things that we're
Hmm.
fairly familiar with. The DICOM v2 one, the ID no longer has an at field, it's just type as well. Um, and notably, most things go into a body
Hmm.
tag. So like description and items, those are specific to the protocol, while attachments is just named attachments. So according to my understanding, I could be wrong because I haven't looked super deep into the spec, but I think that the decorators have disappeared, and that you no longer have the same style of decorators. You just have, for instance, a dedicated attachments field that can be on any DICOM message, for instance.
Yeah.
So
Hmm. Yeah.
I guess my overall point here though is that this is fairly similar. Like you have your ID and type, you have attachments. You don't have the same concept of a decorator. You do have some default fields, like you consider ID as a default field, type as a default field, uh, language, like any uh, multi-language support would be on the base, from my understanding.
Hmm.
Attachments are on the base level. So I think it changes it a little bit, but I don't think it would be too different from when we go to DICOM v2.
Yeah. 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 See. Yeah. What does happen to decorators? Say like a thread decorator or something like that.
Oh,
Um.
that's a good question. I'll bring up my PR because that involves threading.
Oh, cool.
I'll view it in the DICOM v1. So you got your thread and your thread ID. That
Hmm.
now is just a thid, and you have a pthid that would also could be on it. So it's just a field
Hmm.
that got broken out. Because one of the things I have noticed is that the majority of the time I've noticed, you only ever have like a thid here. You might have a pthid, um, but the thread decorator had a whole bunch of other things that could be indicated on it.
Hmm.
Um, you would have sender order, received orders. You could have a goal code.
Hmm.
Um, and I've never seen either of these be used. So taking into the context, you could just have a field for thid and a field for pthid, which is what they have done according to my understanding.
Right. Okay. Okay. So does the didcom v2 spec say that thid is one of these like root level fields that you can have?
According to my understanding, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that there's going to be some things that are uh really nice here with DICOM too. Um to
Yeah.
your
That's
overall point though, I think that it will probably deserve a new maybe a new crate in that or we completely scrap everything in the crate and start fresh. But I think we want to probably migrate between decom v1 and v2. So
Yeah.
probably new crate, even if it has a similar, we could potentially borrow a decent portion of what's there, depending on how much we want to refactor it for versions being tied closely to the message definitions, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'm glad that you brought that up because it could be a good time if we do a refactor here.
Mm.
Um, we could potentially take into account structuring it so that we don't have significant changes that we need to do for DIGCOM v2, and that it's like, oh yeah, we just have to take out decorators and have custom additional fields on the base messages that are possible.
Yeah.
Uh, that might be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it might be the right opportunity to consider, yeah, what you wrote there, tying versions in sort of the root level messages and how we want to do it based off having more experience in that crate now. Hmm.
Yeah, I. This is a really good conversation.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's good.
yeah. So that was the biggest thing where I was like, this is what gives me concern. Or at least is worth talking about.
Hmm.
Um, the the rest of this pretty good. I liked that you added the label. That was good. I think all of this looked pretty good. Yeah, I think that this should be um, when you make the once you make the update to the any XYZ wrappers, like um to handle it in that way, I think we can
Hmm.
get this merged in um pretty quickly. So yeah,
Cool. Yeah, was there another comment further down, or did we solve that one? Uh,
this one.
yes. Yeah. Do you want me to change this as well? Make it required that an
Yeah,
invitation.
like I think we either do it in this PR or in a separate PR, and I feel like it's appropriate here because like I think
Hmm.
that to me the two contexts for the it I think we should have it be signed in either case, whether or not it's implicit or explicit, and that will help mitigate any kind of security concern, even if it is a fairly convoluted path to get there.
Yeah.
Um, so I think changing it to have it be required seems like the right choice to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And based off the to-do comments that are there around the optionality of it, I think they're a little bit confused, some of those comments. Like for example, that first one saying this should only happen if we rotate the did. But then the spec says that you have to rotate the did. You can't use the same did as was in the invitation in the response. It's gotta be rotated.
Does it?
Um, that yeah, it'll be in
Because I think it would be in
it'll
the
be in the
response.
response. Yeah.
You read my mind.
I think does it say it in the field description?
It
Uh,
hopefully
so
does not have. Oh, I guess it. Oh, it may
it
not
says
be
may
used
not.
the same.
Maybe my what does may not mean? Does it mean cannot? No.
I think that it is a mandatory because I think it would be. Oh, I don't remember.
No,
Because
oh,
I'm
could
like,
this?
must is required, should is a should, but may not.
Hmm. I guess for our implementation, we can assume that we must not do it. Hmm.
That would make sense to me. I think what's bizarre is I've been reading this RFC a lot in the past little bit, and I'm like, I swear it actually had a thing that said that you could use.
A reuse the same did.
Yeah,
Ah,
I wonder if I was thinking of the fact that you could rotate the key. So you keep the same did but rotate the key or something along those
oh,
lines.
right. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
I think that the um I think that it is, to me, always creating a new did seems like the safer and easier and better approach. So I think
Hmm.
that that would be my approach. And then if we come to find out or need to be able to support having the ability to keep the same did but rotate the key, uh, then we can add that. But I've never actually seen this so far in
Hmm.
in my experience, so it's not something that I'm aware of. At least it's generally you, from what I know, you I would rely on this here, that this is supposed to be a new did, and I think it would be reasonable given this terminology here for us to expect that other frameworks should be able to handle it being a new did all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
think I
sorry, I
agree.
threw us on that. I threw us on that tangent there.
That was a
Need
good one.
to I need to revise my spec language meaning because I
Yeah,
think I
that's
read that it should not or must not, and then misinterpreted it. Yeah. Okay.
I have
Anyway,
it was
I guess the
I,
point is I'll try and make that invitation key required, and unless something dramatically breaks, I'll keep it that way.
yeah, right. Is the yeah, I had a debate in my head earlier today of whether or not invitation key is the right name for it. I think so, because it
Hmm.
either comes from the invitation or it's an implicit invitation via a public did. So,
Yeah. 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 It's a bit weird.
but yeah, I think that was all the comments on this one.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for your time on it.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no, thank you for doing you're doing the hard part.
it. Yeah, and then I have another one in the hopper for you, so look forward to that.
Is that the signature checking one, or you have another one you're
Yeah.
working on?
No, no, the signature checking one, yeah.
Okay. I think how big is this one? I haven't actually looked at this one yet. How big is this one in comparison to the
Very, very small.
okay.
That diff should give you the view. The file changes is misleading because it's branched off the other one.
That's what I thought. Well, I think you took the right approach there of um doing a separate PR, but doing it based off of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, smaller. Um, anyway, we
Well, cool.
can
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah. I can look at that at another point in time.
Cool, cool, cool. Sounds good.
uh, awesome. I figured I would also touch back on. I still need to reach out to the community to try and identify if anybody's using the legacy and indie SDK crates and whatnot. I plan on doing that via Discord and at the Aries working group tomorrow. So
Hmm,
that's still on my mind to do. It slipped off of the to-do list in the past 2 weeks, but um, I'll make progress on that this week.
cool. Yep, no worries. Sounds good.
Uh, yeah. Anything else from your perspective?
No, nothing from me.
Sweet. Um, yeah. Gonna stop the recording.